What's going on, guys? It's Jimmy here, and tensions are rising here in the US and a potential Cold War situation here. You can see here now it's not just the US warning China not to arm Russia. Both Germany and the EU, most of Europe, the European Union, warning China not to arm Russia. So now we have a large portion of the world threatening or warning China, saying, don't arm Russia as we inch closer and closer to a potential us versus them type of situation. And you got to think that hopefully this isn't pushing them closer and closer to Russia. Hopefully, this is just saying, hey, we don't want you to arm Russia, who literally is invading Ukraine. If you've seen my previous video where the Russian chancellor went to the G20 convention with the top 20 countries around the world and got laughed at on stage when he said that Ukraine started this war against Russia, and he got laughed at by the top 20 countries in the world. And he said that they want to end this war. Russia said, we want to end this war. And they literally, the top 20 countries in the world laughed at him on stage. Like, it's just ridiculous, right? If you wanted to end this war, you wouldn't be sending 300 to 500,000 new troops into Ukraine right now, right? You would just end the war. You would just stop going into Ukraine, right? But here's what a bipartisan U.S. committee from Congress says on this matter right now. Here, take a listen to this, and they also talk about a couple other top things here as well.
Joining me now are the chair and ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, appearing here together, Republican Congressman Mike Turner of Ohio and Democratic Congressman Jim Himes of Connecticut. Gentlemen, welcome back to Meet the Press, and thank you for coming on together.
Thanks for having us.
Before we start on this stuff, this train derailment overnight happened in your congressional district. I know the shelter-in-place order is no longer. What more can you tell us? What more have you learned, and is the federal government responding?
Sure. This truly is outrageous. You know, Ohio is sort of the crossroads of America, both on the road and in rail. An unbelievable amount of goods travel through Ohio, some hazardous. What we've seen, recently with the risk to communities is unacceptable. Luckily, it seems we may have missed a bullet in this one, that this train may have been empty, and it looks like that hazardous materials is not going to be a threat to the community. We'll have to see.
Is it clear? Do you think it's clear that the freight industry isn't well regulated and needs to be?
Oh, absolutely. And the fact that we're having derailment after derailment shows really the lack of investment, the disinvestment in our infrastructure, and that needs to change.
Let me move to this. Congressman Himes, I'll start with this. I know both of you have been getting these briefings. Another warning to China. We heard it from the Secretary of State about arming Russia. Our reporting indicates that this actually came from our intelligence inside of Russia, confirmed around what's. How serious is this threat, and do we know if China has made a final decision?
Well, no question it's a serious threat. We've seen the Russian military obviously come apart. The Chinese could reverse that in the same way that the Iranians are helping the Russians right now. I think the administration is doing the right thing by saying, don't do this. Now, it doesn't surprise me at all that there's a debate inside China about whether they should do this. Hopefully, wisdom prevails. I couldn't help but note in the Chinese proposed peace plan, the 12th point said we need to focus on rebuilding rebuilding Russia. I can imagine the Chinese see a lot of business there. Obviously, if they're part of the Russian assault on Ukraine, they will not get that business. So, no, I don't think a final decision has been made, but I do think it's wise for us to say, don't go there.
Congressman Turner, you've noted that we have a different posture now on our intelligence. We're releasing more of it. Do you think more of it should be released to make sure the world believes us?
Right. Well, and obviously you've seen with the CIA director even calling out China on this issue that they're considering it as a huge shift in policy. And what we're seeing is the administration using intelligence to try to impact the outcome of policy, right? So they're not just saying we happen to know this and looking to hold someone accountable. They're trying to thwart them, to stop them from doing this. The problem with China entering this is because, you've got the West giving weapons to Ukraine. You've got Russia depleting their stores. We obviously, the West together, have an ability to impact Ukraine greater than Russia alone does. There would be an inexhaustible source of weapons if China in its production capacity supported Russia, and that would change the dynamic.
What kind of intel do we have on the state of the Russian army, Congressman Himes? Meaning, we've seen some reports that they may be running out of munitions. They have some issues. What does our folks say?
Well, so neither Mike nor I can get too deep into any particular intel, but you don't need to get too deep into intel. Consider the fact that you see every single day on television, which is the entire Russian army cannot take a town that nobody had ever heard of a year ago, the town of Bakhmut. Now, Mike and I have been doing this long enough that we remember when we literally devoted hundreds of billions of dollars and much of our national security apparatus to this beast of a Russian military. Today, we see that they can't, if even with the push of the president, Vladimir Putin, they can't take a town. That doesn't mean they're not still dangerous. They have nuclear weapons, but they are not what we thought they were.
I want to play something. Sergei Lavrov was at the G20, Congressman Turner. And wait do you hear the reaction to something he said here? Let me play it.
The war which we are trying to stop and which was launched against us using Ukrainian people, of course, it influenced the policy of Russia.
There's nothing like being able to say the phrase, the world is laughing at them.
Completely.
The world is laughing at them.
Spontaneously.
What should the West use a moment like that for?
Well, the thing about both Putin, Lavrov, and even Medvedev, although he's supposed to be the new face of a new Russia, come from an era where they controlled Eastern Europe. They could say things that were not true, and people believed them because they controlled information. Today, information can't be controlled. So the laughability of what they're saying, the ridiculousness of what they're saying, is easily exposed.
Yeah, and just imagine what Russia is telling their people on why they're invading Ukraine. I mean, of course, we know it's something along the lines of that they're liberating Ukraine and all the bad things that Ukraine is doing, yada yada yada. And they literally try to go to the G20 and say that Ukraine started the war against Russia. It's just literally, the world is literally laughing at Russia for saying stuff like this. You can't make this stuff up. It's literally 19 other countries laughing at Russia. And the question here is, will China now help Russia militarily? Because a lot of sources are saying that Russia could run out of a lot of military supplies here, well, as early as this spring. So we'll see. Will they get a helping hand somewhere? Also here, they talk about the classified documents that are now, we've found here from both sides, Republicans and Democrats, Biden, Trump, and Pence. Take a listen to this.
Saying is easily exposed.
All right, let me move to the issue of these classified documents. Nobody seems to be satisfied with what you got. Congressman Heim, does that include you? Were you satisfied with the briefing?
So we have a lot more work to do. Look, I think as the leaders of the Intelligence Committee, our number one job is to make sure that the DNI, the FBI, whoever needs to do it, does everything they need to do to protect the sources and methods that might have been exposed were any of those documents to have been out in the wild. So there's a lengthy process to figure out that. And I can't speak for Mike, but I will tell you that though we have been briefed, we've got a lot more to do to make sure that the government is doing what it should be doing.
Well, let me ask specifically, do you know what the Trump docs are, Congressman Turner?
Do
you know what the Biden docs are, and do you know what the Pence docs are?
No, but there are some things that we do know. And first off,
Let me stop there. No? They didn't share with you those things in a classified setting?
Right.
Why?
Well, first off, in the things that we do know, one of the things we know is that the FBI is not being forthcoming. They're not giving us the information. They're claiming that it's going to affect the outcome of their investigation, which of course it can't, because the people who are the targets of their investigation know what are in those documents. Right. And we have the clearance and the ability to look at these documents. We also know from Avril Haines that she said that she was not consulted prior to the raid on Trump's Mar-a-Lago home, that in fact it was not a national security basis. So as we go through this process, as they give us the category of the documents and their assessment as to who had access to them, who did not have access to them, we're beginning to build an understanding. But the thing that we know is that it's unbelievable that administration after administration is apparently sloppy and messy in their use of classified documents. And that's one thing on a bipartisan basis we have to address well beyond just this. This has to change, where classified documents are under a certain amount of control.
But Congressman Himes, do you at least know the classification levels of these docs? Do you know, is there Is there a distinction between the Trump docs, the Biden docs, and the Pence docs or not?
So we have not been shown anything that would allow us to draw that conclusion, and we got to be a little careful here because what we were shown.
So you weren't briefed much.
Well, we were briefed, but let's just say that neither one of us are satisfied that we got enough information to execute our primary responsibility of making sure that sources and methods have been protected. We've got more to learn before we can be satisfied on that.
So right now, you have no idea whether these were the highest level
well, we didn't say
or
no,
the mid-level?
We didn't say no idea.
Okay.
Again, we can't get too into the details. We got a flavor for what was there, and I won't speak for Mike, but I will tell you, having been given a flavor, this is a very serious issue. This wasn't stuff that we can say clearly does not matter. It matters.
In all three cases?
Well, again,
Or are
we
you
don't
not
know.
ready to
We don't know yet.
One thing I would tell you, Chuck, which is important, which is also the symbolism of the fact that Jim and I are here together.
I was just going to say, Devin Nunes and Adam Schiff, I don't know if would have done this
Right.
together.
We have shifted, and it takes two to shift to a bipartisan basis. And you see it on the Senate side, too, with Marco Rubio, Senator Warner. And the approach to this issue of the Biden docs, the Trump docs, and the Pence docs, we're looking at holistically, what do we have to do to fix this? How do we address this? What were the risks involved? And you have to understand also that without Congress having asked, there wasn't even a risk assessment being done. We were the ones who initiated this. That's part of the concern.
I get the sense that the intel community doesn't trust Congress. And you guys, is that fair? Do you think you guys have to rebuild you have to prove to them that you're trustworthy with secrets?
I would say it's more of a tension between the FBI and Congress than it is the intelligence community, because we're having
more FBI in Congress.
Absolutely, and I think that's going to come to a head over the next couple of years. You're seeing it in a number of areas where they're just not, they are not special. They don't have greater privileges than the president does, and they're continuing to act as if they have some privilege to be able to operate without congressional oversight.
Congressman Hines, I'm curious what that piece about sort of the tension between Main Justice and the FBI having to do with retrieving the classified documents from Mar-a-Lago. It looks like there was fear going in of retribution. The FBI are they more concerned about perception than whether they're doing their job? Are you worried about this?
Well, two things about the FBI. First of all, and Mike's right, they are subject to congressional oversight. Secondly, they do have to preserve the integrity of their investigation, and there are investigations on board right now. So we need to work with them because both of us, everybody wants them to be able to do investigations in an unsloppy manner. We've got too much of a history of investigations in a somewhat sloppy manner. But of course there was consternation. Look, it's one thing to conduct a raid on average Joe citizen, to conduct a raid on a former president who, and I hope I don't insult my good chairman here, who was sort of known for his aggressive retribution against people he didn't like. I'm sure that got a lot of discussion. But look, the lesson to be drawn here is if you don't want to raid on your home, don't take a year to cough up documents that we know are out there.
The COVID origin. Go ahead.
Or 6 years, because Biden took 6.
Fair enough.
The one aspect that's important here is that Merrick Garland did an unbelievable, terrible political miscalculation. He appointed a special prosecutor against Trump, not realizing he was going to end up having to appoint one against his own boss.
Right.
And how that's going to play out is going to be amazing.
Yeah. So here's the problem: is that even members of the Congress Intelligence Committee, that basically the highest ups in Congress, don't even know what the documents are in a classified setting of what Biden had, what Trump had, and what Pence had of these classified documents, what they took home. So who knows what they had? And how do we actually know if they should be punished or not? I mean, this is probably the best way to say it. How do they be held accountable or not? Do they get a slap on the wrist? Do they get nothing? Do they just say, don't do it again? How do we prevent this from happening again? And how do we know if congressmen and congresswomen have done the exact same thing? Because remember, and even Senator Joe Manchin said this, that, well, if you didn't know this, congressmen, congresswomen get access to classified documents if they're part of intelligence committees or different committees. Sometimes they deal with classified documents, okay? And in this particular case, they're not getting access to those ones that the presidents took home. But when they're dealing with like foreign affairs committees or Department of Energy or different things, they're dealing with classified documents too on different matters. How do we know if the hundreds and hundreds of House representatives and senators didn't take home classified documents, and who knows where they have gone over the years. Something to think about. Yeah, it's a whole nother can of worms. So let me know your thoughts here in the comments, and I'll keep you up to date here. If you haven't yet, make sure to click the subscribe button down below, then the bell icon so you don't miss out on new videos that come out here on our YouTube channel every day at 10 a.m., 3 p.m., and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And thanks for hitting the like button for us here as well. Here's some videos you can watch next. Here's a video with some good news for millions of Americans that just came out, and Social Security, Medicare, SSI, SSDI update here as well. And also here's a video here on the origins of C19 with some very interesting news here as well. So click on one of those videos next. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.